Dr. Steelhammer, Vladimir Klitschko, and Dr. Iron Fist, Vitaly Klitschko, Shannon the Cannon Briggs, and Butterbean, Cruiserweight King Jai Obataia.
Boxing King Media, powered by BYD. Delighted to be joined by Mr. Duke McKenzie on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. What a night! We spoke about Chris Eubank Jr., Conor Benn. There was all sorts of talk going into the fight, Duke, but the event's done. What an event it was! I'm going to slowly break it down. I'm going to talk about the start of the night till we get to the actual fight, if that's all right with you.
Sure. Not a problem, champ.
Great stuff. So let's start off with it. So the event starts. I think everything. It was a sold out arena as well. But the most iconic moment I think in boxing we'll see for a long time. He said he wasn't going to come. He didn't want nothing to do with the event. He said a lot of negative stuff about the event. This Rolls Royce Cullinan pulls up outside and the door opens. Bang! Chris Eubank Sr. rocks up. What did you think when you saw that?
It was like something out of a Batman film. Do you know what I mean? When Batman turns up to a scene, everything stops and it's like the whole world stops and everybody takes notice. The senior had been saying, as you know, he wasn't going to attend the fight. He convinced me, listening to him on social media, there was not a slightest chance of him going to be turning up at this fight. And you know what? I'm glad for him that he did. I'm glad for his son, obviously, that he did. And it was like I say, it really was like something out of a pantomime there when Eubank Sr. turned up. That guy's loved so much around the world, and no more so than here. And when he turned up, it was like the icing on the cake, really. So, I mean, like I say, for nobody else's sake, only Senior's sake, I'm glad that he turned up.
I was lucky enough to speak to him a few moments after he turned up, and his exact words were, "I was always coming. I never said I wasn't."
Yeah, that's not what he said. He said, when he broke into his patois, Jamaican lingo, and he said, you must be mad. He didn't want no part of it whatsoever. The pantomime, the disgrace, the egg slap, the whole shebang. He went off on one, didn't he? But like I say, you can put all that to one side because he's a celebrity, and celebrities say things all the time that they don't necessarily mean. So I'm glad he turned up. Like I say, for nobody else's sake, only his sake, because I think he would have got slaughtered in the press had he have not turned up for this momentous occasion.
Indeed. And then as the event's going on, I've got to shout out Ring Magazine and His Excellency Turkey because the event was incredible, like the atmosphere. And we saw something different. I don't know if you noticed this, but we've never seen ring card girls get replaced by celebrity lookalikes.
It's the God. Like I say, this fight wasn't a fight, was it? It was an event. These are stadium fighters, which is why everybody that was involved in it is jumping up and down now because they got somewhere to hang their hat. You can put this on again and they'll get another 62, 64, even 100,000 seat. It doesn't matter what they put the fight on, they'd sell it out. I can't remember the last time there was a non-title fight or even a title fight with that many celebrities in the audience. It's like everybody wanted to be there. Anybody that was anybody in the world of entertainment, not necessarily boxing, but entertainment, they were popping up left, right, and centre. And this fight really captured the public's imagination for whatever the reason. I mean, we know the dads sold the fight on their classic fights that they had, but this, like I say, this fight wasn't a fight; it was an event, and it was for anybody that was there. They'll never forget the event.
Definitely not. And then we move on, and then it comes time. It gets to the time where the hand wraps have got to get on, and you will have seen the footage of, they did pre-warn Team Eubank that Joe Saunders will be going in to check Chris's hand wraps as he's getting them wrapped. But you saw what unfolded. I believe Billy turned up a little bit late, and I think, from what I've been told, the rules are that one member of the team can watch the hand wraps, and that person had already gone in. So by the time Billy got in, Team Eubank knew that there was no way he was getting in. So what did you make of that whole little fracas?
Well, it was all part and parcel, wasn't it? There was always going to be drama when Joe Saunders is around because he can't keep his mouth shut and he confronts everybody and he likes to get under everybody's skin. And he did exactly the job that he was sent there to do. And it was quite hilarious, to be honest with you. I thought he was quite clever. it was so typical of him to act in that kind of a manner. Do you see what I mean? You know, listen, all these sort of things go on, you know, post-fight, you know, when you're checking bandages, and there's always somebody going to get under somebody's skin, and somebody gets threatened or somebody gets called out. It's all supposed to rile your opponent and get under his skin, which it didn't really. But it just added to the drama. So nobody got hurt. There was just a lot of name calling, a few little bits of pushing and shoving, but nothing serious. It just added to the night, really.
Yeah, indeed it did. And you saw Eubank's manager say that Napa, it was a massive unit, saying that I guarantee you that you are not getting past me.
Yeah, well, he meant it, didn't he? And I would, if he said that to me, I think I'd look the other way. You know what I mean? He'd get one of them. Oh, okay, mate.
Yeah.
He was a unit. And listen, if it all did kick off, I know where my money would be.
Yeah, well, to be fair, some people say you can never not back a boxer, especially at the level of Billy Joe. But who knows? But either way, it was sorted, and the hand wraps were done. The ring walks were unbelievable. What did you think of the ring walks?
Again, it was entertainment of the highest order. That's the sort of thing you only get in films, in a Rocky film. You know, it's the sort of thing you don't even see in world title fights. The fact there wasn't a title on the line, you know, nothing, not even a Southern area or a Pentacontinental or an Intercontinental. There was nothing of any description. You know, I mean, they're the lowest. They're the lower sort of titles that I'm talking about. There wasn't a world title fight on the line. A European, there was no titles on the line. But this fight had every kind of drama, every kind of bit of excitement you could expect. It couldn't have been better if it was for a world title. Do you see what I mean? The build-up was fantastic. You know, the only thing missing for me in this whole fight, they could have done like a 24/7 thing on these guys. Do you see what I mean? Like the build-up that HBO used to do. You know, they do like a whole week of the build-up, the training. You know, the getting out of bed at 4 a.m., doing the runs. You know, going to bed at 6 o'clock. You know, the whole sort of build-up. You know, the dieting, how they felt in the build-up, in the run-up to the fight. That's probably what was missing in the whole sort of thing for me. Just being a little bit sort of pernickety, if you will. But like I say, it was an event, and it lived up to the event. On a personal level, the fight wasn't really worth two bob, but the fact that those two were BENN and Eubank, do you see what I mean? It was good that it was BENN and Eubank, because obviously what their fathers brought to the sport of boxing, but it didn't live up to that kind of level of excitement. And as a boxing spectacle, I thought it was probably a letdown for me, if I'm being perfectly honest.
So we'll talk about the fight. So they get in the ring and
Sure.
the fight. So what did you make of the early rounds, which were a bit scrappy, and then it kind of they started exchanging more as the fight went on?
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, like I say, maybe the fact that there wasn't a world title fight on the line, or maybe it was the fact that these two guys aren't world-class fighters, that you didn't see what you would expect from a world title fight. That's where they let themselves down. You know, it was evident that Eubank Sr. was 2 sizes bigger than Conor BENN Jr. He was always bigger than him. It looked that way when they got in there. Conor BENN was always going to be chasing the fight because he's the naturally smaller man. He's never hit hard enough to take out, good world-class fighters, or at least fighters that, that can hold their hands up and fight back. He was never going to knock Eubank out. And, talk's cheap at the end of the day. And if you're going to say you're going to, knock somebody out or smash somebody's face in, then you've got to be able to go out there and do that. But that's not really his style, Conor BENN. Conor BENN's not a massive puncher, not even at welterweight. So really, he's kind of mugged himself off a little bit by saying, I'm going to knock this guy out. He didn't give Eubank enough respect. Like I say, he was throwing shots at several points in that fight, and he wasn't even looking where they were going. It was just like head down, just winging the shots over. He's not his dad. His dad could do that, and his dad would detonate and knock guys out. Let's get that right. Nigel BENN Sr. was a knockout specialist. But, Junior doesn't have that. Conor BENN Jr. doesn't have that knockout explosive power. So he was always going to be chasing the fight for me. He was never going to win the fight for me. And as it worked out, as it turned out, he didn't win the fight for me.
Yeah, you did back Eubank to win the fight. What did you make of the mid to late rounds where there was a few moments where it looked like Chris was hurt? He was holding on. You know, I was ringside, so I could see that there was moments where he was gripping hold of Connor's left or right arm, and he wasn't letting go until the referee broke him up. There was a few moments like that. Why do you think he was hurt?
Probably knackered. You know, if you saw the training footage or the footage of him sweating out in heat bags and towels and sweat bags and towels on his head, and, you know, I mean, to leave it so late as well before a fight to drop those final few pounds, that's dangerous. Now, he's got away with it in this fight because he boxed a welterweight. Let's get that right. If Eubank Jr. is fighting a fully fledged middleweight, he's in trouble because all of that effort, all of that pulling and pushing and leaning, and you know all the effort he put into to winning that fight, the amount of punches that he threw, takes its toll. And I sincerely hope he doesn't fight at that weight again. I sincerely hope we never see him having to drag and put his body and his mind through that again. He might not be so lucky next time. So let's just hope that's a one-off. You know, he's got a small guy in front of him. He beat the small guy, and you know, let's just hope he moves up now to super middleweight, and you know, where he doesn't have to put himself through all of that physical or mental torture.
You know, Eddie Hearn raised this point a few times because he said the narrative, everyone was running with the narrative that Eubank's been made to boil down. I'll ask you as a former world champion guy that's been there, done it all. Would you prefer to be the smaller guy going up against the bigger guy, or would you rather be the bigger guy who's had to boil down and make that way with the rehydration clause on fight day? Which one of them two scenarios would you prefer if you had to pick one?
Well, me personally, I'd rather be the smaller guy simply because I can eat and drink my face off. If you know, a good fighter is a happy fighter, and if you're a happy fighter, that means you can eat and drink what you want. That's what that saying actually means, in my opinion. Now, if you're a big guy and you have to boil down to drag yourself down to do the weight, you're weak. So maybe that's why Eubank's performance was the way that it was. He wasn't strong for 12 rounds. You know, at times he looked like he was struggling, like you say, where he had to sort of claim, hold on, do one thing and another just to get himself through the rounds. If we was looking at a strong, a strong 160, then he wouldn't have had to do those sort of actions. Do you see what I mean? He'd have been strong throughout the fight. It's horrible when you have to drag to do weight. You can't sleep at night. You're so hungry, your stomach's stuck to your back, your mouth's dry, your head's spinning. But he's had to go through all of that, and he still didn't make the weight, but he still managed to win. So that says a lot about his character, because that takes a lot of doing. And again, speaking from personal experience, it's a horrible way to live. It's a horrible way to get through a fight, but get through it he did. And let's just hope he doesn't do it again now against Canelo or anything like that, because he would be in serious trouble.
It's good to know that because, like I said, obviously, I'm just speaking as a neutral, but you know, Eddie did say that the narrative's too much with Chris. But from your professional opinion, Connor had the advantage going in because he could eat what he wanted.
100%. That's why he was talking so confidently, because he was half banking on the fact that Eubank would be so tight at the weight, that Conor Ben could probably jump on him, make the fight really, really hard, and wait for Eubank to go tired. I mean, Eubank went tired in the fight, but he managed to disguise it pretty well. You know, as I stated before, he'd boxed at a higher level than what Conor Ben has in terms of fighting the likes of Billy Joe Saunders and James DeGale. You know, that's caliber of fighter that he'd been boxing. You know, he didn't win the fights, but he's boxed those guys, and those fights went the distance. So he's got that experience. So when he fights somebody like Conor Ben, who hasn't won an egg cup, well, you draw on that experience. Do you see what I mean? And that's what gets you through.
What do you think of? I know you touched on it there already, kind of, but the whole skill level between both fighters, and also Connor's actual performance. Can he basically go on? In fact, before I even ask you that, how did you score it? How did you score it?
But yeah, I made Eubank a comfortable winner by at least 3 rounds, maybe 4. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I score it as opposed to rounds, as opposed to points. Do you see what I mean? So I made Eubank win the fight by at least 3 or 4 rounds, quite comfortably.
I see the AI judge had Eubank winning as well, 117, 111.
Yeah, I mean, AI doesn't lie. You know, you know, I hope that that doesn't come into force as a reality, or maybe it should come into force as a reality, because we've seen some shocking decisions in boxing before, where you've had judges, you know, sit at different corners of that ring and they just see completely different fights. You know, at least an AI judge can't lie. You know, because it's all recorded, it's all documented, it's all computer based, analytic, science fact. So sorry, science fiction. So maybe that is the way of scoring fights for the future.
Chris ended up going to the hospital. I've seen since they're saying that he's not broken his jaw, but you can see his face is quite swollen. Um, do you think he's been took to hospital maybe because of the hydration in his system?
Because of the rehydration, yeah, absolutely, 100%. But you know, he knows he's tight at that weight, and he wanted to make sure, you know, everything was in working order after the fight. So you know, he's done that as a precautionary measure. You know, he's a smart man. He's not stupid at all, and he did that. You know, didn't need telling, just took himself off. Do you see what I mean? So that's good for him. That's a smart move to make.
Um,
But again, sorry, but again, it's dangerous the fact that he drags himself so badly down to make weight. And again, I've been in that situation where you're dragging yourself so much, you've got no energy. And you know what else happens? When you drag yourself to make weight that much, once you've had your weigh in, you don't even want to eat. You can't even eat. You can't eat properly because your stomach has shrunk to a point where it's so small, it's so tight. It takes several days for you to eat small portions before you can start stretching your stomach again and rehydrate properly and get your energy back. So even more, I've got even more respect for Eubank Jr. for the fact that he's done that and gone through with the fight and won the fight.
Based on what you saw, there was talk afterwards that I think Eddie Hearn suggested that, like health-wise, it may not be good for Conor to fight a heavier guy again, as them sort of fights take time at your, your career. So there's a suggestion they may go back to welterweight. Based on what you saw last night, can you see Conor Ben winning a world title, either beating
No,
Mario
no,
Barrios, Ennis?
no,
Not even
no,
Barrios?
no. Conor, listen, it's just my opinion. Conor Benn's not world class. He hasn't had world class experience. It's okay saying, we'll fight a world, we'll fight a world champion, or we'll fight this one, or we'll fight that one. Then this is just my opinion. He's not world class. He's a good fighter, but he's not world class. We're not looking at a world champion in the making. He's had a number of fights now, and jumping up to 160 hasn't done him any favors. I don't think he's going to be strong at 147. I don't think he can make 147. He would be in the exact same position at 147 as Eubank was at 160, where he's got to drag himself down to make that weight. You're not going to see the best of Conor Ben at 147, what the welterweight poundage. I don't think that one, not at all.
Okay. What do you think both guys should do next?
Spend their millions and just turn their back and walk away from the boxing? No, of course not. They're gonna probably have a return. They'll probably have a return. There's another 20 million out there to be earned. Why not?
There's obviously talks of health risks, etc. They've talked about it for Conor fighting the bigger guy, and for Chris, obviously, if he has to boil down again. If you're part of either team, obviously looking at the money on the table, because they've already suggested post-fight that they booked September for the stadium. Would you advise either guy? Should they be fighting each other again?
From Eubank's perspective, 100% not. No, not again. Might not be so lucky next time. There's only so many times you can drag yourself down to make weight, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't work. I mean, he's proven that he can't fight at 160 because he missed the weight, right? But by whatever it was, some ridiculous amount. And he's been working his backside off to make that weight, and they thought they had it calibrated on their scales, but it wasn't the case. What they're doing is playing a game of Russian roulette, both of them. Conor Benn's not a middleweight, and Eubank isn't a middleweight either. So for one to go up and one to come down, it's not the smartest thing to do. Money's great, and we all want to chase the pound note, and we all want the millions of pounds. But when you're talking about your health, there's no amount of money you can put on your health, is there?
Definitely not. Well, I genuinely appreciate your insight, knowledge. Anything else you want to add on the event or on that particular fight, or anything else, Mr. McKenzie?
No, only the fact that, you know, it, like I said, it wasn't a fight, it was an event. And it was so pleasing to see so many people coming out, not only the celebrities, but the general public all getting involved. I had so many people from my gym going to watch that fight. And I was quite shocked, to be honest with you, when people were saying, you know, I'm going to go to watch the fight of the weekend. Because like I say, it was an event, and they, you know, they were in a lucky position, a privileged position, say, you know, I was at one of the biggest fights in boxing, not British boxing, but in world boxing history. I was at one of the biggest fights. You know, we're not talking about Ali Fraser or Leonard against Duran. We're talking about two guys who haven't won any titles between them. But these guys, they're a brand, right? They're branded fighters, and it was good to see and pleasing to see from that perspective. These guys brought boxing back to the casual fan. These aren't YouTube guys. These aren't misfits. These are proper boxers. And what you got was proper boxing people at a boxing event. That's the pleasing thing for me.
Definitely so. Any of the undercard fights stuck out to you?
Only William Smith. I'm glad he won.
Great.
You know, yeah, I'm glad he won. I'm glad he's back in the game, back in the hunt, as they say. He was the only one really for me that I was really pleased that he got a good victory.
Good stuff. That's it, really. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. McKenzie. And
You're welcome.
trying to think what is next. The more events next week. I'll catch up with you later in the week.
Chap, I'll catch up with you one at the shows eventually.
Oh.
Like I say, unfortunately, I didn't get a shot from TalkSport, but you know, there's always going to be next time, and if not next time, then the one after that. So we're going to meet. I'm 100% sure.
I look forward to it.
Me too.
Introducing the all-new BYD Sea Lion 7, the luxury electric SUV that's changing the game. Book your free test drive today at the BYD showroom in Sheffield.